Alright, and welcome back to my Bloodborne Blood Level 4 guided walkthrough. In the previous episode we went over the basics and got our saw cleaver upgraded to +3, and we also opened up the shortcut in Old Yarnum. So now we're going to start off by taking on the Bloodstarved Beast. As I said in the previous episode, I'm not going to use beast blood, fire paper or blood cocktails in this boss fight, not even molotovs or parries. This is an early boss that is actually much easier than you might think. So we're not going to overpower him, this will be about understanding his moveset. And that's a general lesson in all the Souls games. As long as you understand a boss's moveset, in principle you could stay alive as long as you have the patience for. That is why hour-long fist-only fights and such are possible. And the key to fighting the Bloodstarved Beast is actually very simple. Stay behind him and realize that you can often get behind him without even using the dodge button at all. The thing about this boss is that his chaotic movements look really intimidating, but simply aren't that dangerous at all. The only thing to be wary of is the poison cloud around him in the third phase. So definitely make sure to have some antidotes ready. So when the fight starts, all you need to do is to simply walk behind him. And just steering your character slightly to the right is more often than not already enough to dodge his attack. And if your spacing is a little bit off, you can easily adjust by doing a quick step. So again, just run or walk to his right side in order to get behind him, and adjust with a short dodge if your spacing is a bit off. When behind him, get some attacks in, preferably using transform attacks for extra damage. You can even do a charge R2 for a backstab if you want to. However, when he is too close to a wall, just let him come to you. Make sure you never get stuck. You're not in a hurry after all, just take your time. If you dash forward when he slowly raises his arm, indicating he does a dash attack of his own, that will already be enough for him to move past you. As you can see, no matter how crazy his move seems to be and how large the area it seems to affect, it's never directly behind him. So if you approach the fight like this, at worst you take a little bit of chip damage. Once his third phase starts, your poison meter will go up just by being close to him, so make sure you have antidotes ready. However, remember that you slow down when you're in the animation of taking an antidote. So even when you see your life bar rapidly go down, you still need to wait for the right opportunity to use an antidote. So don't panic, otherwise you might get killed when using an antidote. Okay then, third boss down. The next one will be Vicar Amelia, and contrary to the Bloodstarved Beast, that is a great boss to demonstrate the power of beast blood on. However, we're not going to fight her before we have collected enough twin bloodstone shards to upgrade our weapon to +5. Also, I'm going to collect the Radiant Sword Hunter badge, which is hardly necessary, but if you want another example of a great set of clothing to wear on BL4, or even just in general, the Radiant Sword Hunter badge gives you the ability to purchase the Tomb Prospector set, which is one of the best sets for all-round defense. People tend to overlook it because it's not exceptional in regards to any particular stat, but it also doesn't have any downsides. It's all-round for any type of damage basically. Contrary to the Hunter set that I'm wearing at the moment, because that one has very low arcane defenses for example. Again, it's not that important what you wear. In fact, in any practical sense, most of the attires don't make your experience that much different to begin with. But hey, since we don't have to use blood echoes on levels, we might as well use them to buy things. Also, speaking of attires, I forgot to mention this in part 1, but if you want to get the Ashen Hunter set, because of the high beasthood, an easy way to get it is to immediately shoot Jura 3 times with your pistol, the exact moment you finish climbing the ladder. If you don't hesitate at all, 3 shots will knock Jura off the roof. And when he is dead, that allows you to buy his attire from the inside messenger bath in the Hunter's Dream. Now, this gun trick might not work 100% of the time, but it is fairly consistent. Anyway, as I said, what you wear is in the end not the most important thing. However, upgrading your weapon is one of the most important things. So upgrading your weapon should always take priority. However, speaking of the next boss fight, the way I will show you how to easily take Vicar Amelia down even works rather consistently without upgrading your weapon at all. In fact, I used almost the exact same approach in my No Hunter's Dream run as in this playthrough. But regardless, we're going for an absolute freaking massacre this time. So, before fighting Amelia, we are first going to take a trip to Hamwick Charnel Lane. Because that way we will be able to gather enough twin bloodstone shards for a +5 weapon. Now, you don't necessarily have to go there. There are alternatives like going to the early version of Yaragul, and there are also some scurrying beasts close to the door leading to the amygdala that can transport you to the Nightmare Frontier. In fact, that's where you can also find some twin bloodstone shards. But regardless, in the next episode we're going to make an early trip to Canehurst, which you need to access through the monument in Hamwick. So while we're there to pick up upgrade materials, we might as well unlock the shortcut as well. Here we have our first couple of twin bloodstone shards, and in case you're not sure how to safely drop down to the real version of the Hunter's Workshop, if you face the ropes and simply walk forward, you will consistently fall on the platform below. Just make sure that you're not too far to the left or you will bump against the wood that is sticking out, and that might knock you all the way down. And of course we need to be here for the umbilical cord, because I am covering all the bosses, so that includes the moon presence. We don't really need anything else in Cathedral Ward just yet, so I'm just going to run past everything until we reach the area right before Hamwick. Now, in case you hate dogs in video games as much as I do, it can be pretty helpful to use your gun against them to knock them over. Although you have to keep in mind that you cannot hit them while they're on the ground. So try to hit them the moment they stand up. However, even doing that, they can be a real pain in the ass. Well, for me at least. But if you've seen some of my other walkthroughs, I have this weird obsession with dark enemies in games, so I just automatically get frustrated the moment a dog shows up. Yeah, the downside of running past everyone, as you know, is that you can get a whole army of enemies chasing you halfway across the area. Just remember that as long as you light the lantern, you will respawn there automatically if you happen to die right after that. So it's not like the first Dark Souls where a bonfire only counts as a checkpoint if you sit down at it. Merely lighting a lantern is already enough. Okay, here I'm being kind of an idiot, because I should have focused on the enemy throwing molotovs, rather than immediately going for the dog. Or at least I should have moved out of the line of fire. But god damn it, I just immediately go into frustration mode as soon as I see a dog. Yeah, I know, it's this weird tick I have. You have probably experienced this yourself, but the gun, even though it does hardly any damage, it can be a great tool to quickly finish an enemy off if they barely have any health left. Especially when facing a group, it's important to quickly reduce the amount of enemies. 1-on-1 is always better than 1-on-2, and 1-on-2 is always better than 1-on-3. In the context of a fight at least. Alright, so here we have the first shortcut. So let's upgrade our saw cleaver to +4, but then we'll return to Hamwick as there are more twin bloodstone shards to pick up. In fact, when we open up the second shortcut, we will have exactly enough to upgrade to +5. And yes, technically it is possible to go out of your way to other areas to upgrade to +6, maybe even doing some specific farming. But as I said, the fight against Vicar Amelia is already going to be a complete slaughter. So you also don't need to overdo it. Oh, and also make sure that your insight doesn't get above 15, as this will give certain enemies extra attacks. Moreover, low insight increases your beasthood. And speaking of which, The inside messenger bath is a source for both beast blood pellets as well as fire paper and later on bolt paper, depending on where you are in the game's progression. The annoying thing about these humanoid enemies in this specific area is that they tend to push you away before you have the chance to attack them. But there is actually a way to prevent that, as these enemies have a peculiar weakness, as I will show you in a minute, because they stagger if you roll into them. So a safe way of dealing with them is to first roll into them and then immediately attack. So, as I said before, roll into them and then attack. The gun is also a great tool for luring specific enemies over. That way you can prevent having to deal with several enemies at once. Alright, so that's the second shortcut. So now let's go back to the Hunter's Dream and upgrade our weapon to +5. And then it's time to take on Vicar Amelia. Remember that you have iframes when opening doors. So if you just run towards the door and immediately press X, you don't even have to bother with the enemies outside. However, as soon as that animation ends, it might be necessary to immediately roll in order to avoid getting hit from behind. Alright, so here is a very consistent and easy way to take Amelia down. Right before you trigger the fight, use a beast blood pellet and fire paper. Now run up to her right arm and make sure to let your stamina regain. And then hit her right arm with an R1 and then triple L1 combo. The fourth hit will stagger her as it will also hit her right leg. So move to her head for a visceral, and when she lowers her head, hit her face for a small stagger, Then do transform attacks on the left arm and the left leg for a second stagger. Do another visceral, and after that you can more or less just wail away at her, doing transform attacks until she's dead. However, be ready to dodge an attack if necessary, but it is likely that you will actually break her animation before she can even hit you. And that's all there is to it. The only thing to keep in mind is that you cannot just spam your attacks. Always keep an eye on your stamina bar. Whenever she staggers, it is safe to let your stamina recover. Alright, so now we have access to the forest area, so that's where we're going next. If you really want to, you can get poison knives in the alley where the NPCs can be found. Especially great for certain cheese tactics. However, I'm not going to use them, but if you want them, that's where you can get a whole set. Oh, and definitely don't forget the set of twin bloodstone shards behind the crow and the brain sucker, because those are of course definitely relevant. Alright, so far so good. In the next episode we're going to continue in the Forbidden Woods. But we're also going to make an early trip to Castle Cainhurst, because that's where bloodstone chunks can be found. And of course we need to get there because of, well, fashion. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and don't forget the notification bell. And I hope to see you all back in the next episode.